Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Late October may be your last best opportunity for overseeding a poorly performing lawn here in USDA Zone 9. Your next opportunity across the United States will probably be next spring. In either case, we tackle a listener's questions about the best way to go about the process of rehabbing your lawn. College Horticultural Professor retired Debbie Flower has some great tips on that topic. Also, we discuss a great piece of fruit that's ripening right now, Japanese Persimmons. Phil Pursel of Dave Wilson Nursery has advice for growing and choosing those varieties that won't make your mouth pucker up. Podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the Abutilon Jungle in Suburban Purgatory, it's episode 148 of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots, and we'll do it all in under 30 minutes. Let's go. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. A lot of ways you can get your questions in. You can email them to fred@farmerfred.com. You can call us at speakpipe.com/gardenbasics and get it in that way. Or you can give us a call and text it in, among other ways of doing it. You can send pictures that way as well. And the number, 916-292-8964, 916-292-8964. You could leave a message at the Get Growing with Farmer Fred Facebook page, or Farmer Fred Hoffman on Instagram, or at Farmer Fred at Twitter. Is that enough? Thank you. But anyway, Debbie Flower is here, our favorite retired college horticultural professor. We have a lawn question that was texted to us from someone, Debbie, from somewhere. Please, when you send us a question, you can make up whatever name you want, but give us sort of an idea where you live. I don't need a street address, just a city, a county, something where we have an idea of what zone you're in. But this one is anonymous, and it has to do with reseeding a lawn. Now, we're coming up to the end of October, which for USDA Zone 9 is about the last best opportunity for overseeding a lawn before it starts getting too cold. Generally speaking, September, October, best times for doing it in the fall. And in the spring, sure, March, April, even into May for milder areas that you can be reseeding a lawn. And this question, Debbie comes in and says, I thought I would reseed the lawn this October. What kind of seed is best to use on a clay soil with probably a fescue blend that's already growing there? I got an annual ryegrass to use. I think it's better to use perennial, though. Can you recommend the right grass seed to use? Ideally, it should match what you currently have.
Right. Fescue blend is a blend that is used in much of the country. And it's a very tough grass, drought tolerant, and water, even in wet places, water is a precious commodity that we need to save. That's nice to start with that you're already working with that. The disadvantage of a fescue blend is that fescue is a bunch grass, meaning when it germinates, it puts up one blade, and when more blades come, they grow around that one blade, and then more around that one blade. And I actually have an unmown lawn that is a fescue blend, and it's very hummocky. My cats love it because they hummocky, up and down, up and down. People don't like to walk on it. It's pretty. And the cats love to lay in the low spots.
But you can walk on it.
You can absolutely. You can walk on it. Yeah, and it takes the drought very, very well. Is
that the one from Delta Bluegrass, the mow-free?
I put this in before that existed. Delta Bluegrass, at the time I put this in, had sod. My husband insisted we do it by seed, and the seed mix didn't exist. So I looked up what was in the sod and ordered different bags of seed from wherever I could find them and mixed it myself. I do not recommend doing that.
You have a lot of leftover seed.
Well, and lots of weeds came up. Fescue is slow to germinate. It can take 2 weeks to germinate in a warm soil. And so the seeds come in and come up really quickly. And so I'm out there on a board on my hands and knees trying to distribute the weight, pulling the baby weeds out so the fescue can grow. I would definitely go for a brand new fescue lawn, I would go the sod route.
Right. But if you're overseeding, well, that's exactly what the name implies.
Right.
You have a somewhat of a lawn, and now you want to add to it. There are some steps. I don't know if the person who sent us this text message has followed as far as did you remove any thatch that may have been in the existing lawn? Mm-hmm. Did you aerate the lawn? Mm-hmm. Did you buy some starter fertilizer when you overseed? What about a layer of compost to throw on when you're done? And then renting a roller with a water-filled roller to press it into the ground.
Right.
All of those are important steps. And especially, I would check for thatch before I put overseeded. I would want to know if there is a layer of thatch below the green grass.
If there is, there's another grass growing there. Fescue does not produce thatch itself because it is a bunching grass. Mm-hmm. But if you have Bermuda grass, which is invading my fescue lawn, very common here in California, at least this part of California, or a Kentucky bluegrass, which is a very common addition to a fescue lawn in other places. When I lived in New York and New Jersey, we definitely had a fescue Kentucky bluegrass mix. In Portland, Oregon, we had a Kentucky bluegrass mix. The Bermuda and the Kentucky blue are stoloniferous. Stolons are stems that run across the surface of the soil and root periodically, and stolons steal space. They grow and grow and grow. It's wonderful for a lawn, especially one that is used by walked on a lot, used by an animal. As volleyball is played on it, whatever. When you or you practice your golf, it gets injured. A stolon will then quickly grow and fill that space. Where if you have only fescue, it takes a very, very long time to fill that hole. So stolons are good in a lawn, but they will grow over time on top of each other. And then the stolons themselves are generally very waxy. And when they get thick enough, more than 1/4 of an inch, they can prevent water and air from getting into the soil. And so that's why you want to dethatch, is taking those stolons out.
If you go to your local big box store and start looking at the bags of grass seed, you will see a mix. It might say fescue blend, but look for other ingredients in there too, like the Kentucky bluegrass, because it's probably in there. But anyway, with the thatch, probably the easiest way to determine how thick the thatch layer is to dig out a square. Go down. It doesn't have to be a big square. It could be as wide as your shovel head, and just go down all 4 sides. Go down 8 inches or so and bring up that big plug. And then look underneath the green grass. Do you see a layer of brown?
On the soil surface.
Right on the soil surface. And it could be 2 inches thick.
Yeah, thatch can get really thick.
Yeah. And that stops water and nutrients from getting to the soil and the roots of the desirable species.
Mm-hmm. So you can dethatch a lawn. You can hire someone to do it. You can rent equipment to do it. In either case, be sure that the machine has been thoroughly cleaned before they use it in your lawn. I had someone do it to a lawn here in California, and I had never had nutsedge in my lawn before, and then all of a sudden there it was. So it was on the machine, and it was being transferred from someone else's lawn to my lawn.
Yeah. I'm glad it wasn't Bermuda grass. Yes. Because that could happen
That
too.
would happen even more easily.
Yeah. And if you do rent the equipment, clean it yourself when you get home.
Nice,
before you use it.
Nice, hard water stream on the driveway. Yes.
And if you're doing that, then go ahead and aerate it. You can rent an aerator. They remove plugs of soil. And if you have clay soil like this person has, that's one good way to add more air to the soil is to remove those plugs.
Remove those plugs, but then refill them with something. Sand is often used. A lot of people just take what comes out, and it needs to be a hollow tine aerator.
There
are aerators that are just like
golf shoes.
Yes, just they poke holes, but all they're doing is pushing the soil to the side, not opening it up an airspace. So you want a hollow tine aerator. If you've been around where geese have pooped, that's what it looks like when it pulls the stuff out, like goose poop. It's about 3 inches long and finger diameter, and it'll lay all over the surface. And some people just rake that up and break it down into a bucket with their hands and put that back over the soil. With clay soil, I would go in with probably sand to try to fill those holes so that they don't collapse onto themselves.
You wouldn't use compost?
Compost will break down, and then ultimately the hole doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I think I'd save compost for a surface treatment.
Okay. And sand won't create concrete with the clay?
It's a good point. That's a good point. It's a possibility. Yeah. So maybe a mix.
Okay. All right.
Compost. So break down those goose poop sized aeration plugs that have come out of your lawn with your hands. Break them down so that it's loose soil with some organic matter in it, which would be your grass. Add some sand to that, maybe in equal parts, and then go around and put that back in the holes.
There are commercial products available. It's usually with names like Top Blend that are meant to be spread on top of a newly reseeded lawn. I am not sure what all is in there. If you people want to wait 10 minutes, I could go look at a bag.
There are also lawn patch kits, which I have used, that contain some super absorbent, something that swells with water, and they often contain paper. They're usually dyed, maybe blue, and there is seed in there. And so you mix it all up, you get this slurry, and you pour it on the lawn. Or you pour it on the lawn and then you wet it. We follow the directions. I've used different ones, and some have more of the paper and slurry, and they worked better. Because once seed gets wet, if it dries out, it dies. So you want to make sure to keep that grass seed wet once you put it down, and that extra slurry and paper does that.
Hence the reason for covering that area with a thin layer of compost after you're done laying down the seed. You can use a roller, like a big cage that you drag across the lawn, and it drops a nice thin layer of compost, and then press it down into the soil with that water roller that you could also rent.
I'm a little cheap that way, and so what I have done in the past is use bags of composted chicken manure, which is a organic matter with some nutrition in it, laid that across the lawn by hand, raked it in, and then watered it.
How'd your hand smell afterwards?
How'd the car smell after bringing the bags home? Very stinky.
So the chicken manure wasn't so strong that it would impede the seed?
I did not have that experience.
Okay.
Because it's smelly, it's volatilizing a lot of that nitrogen, and it's been composted.
Yeah.
You make sure it's composted. You don't want raw. And so some of that has washed away. Nitrogen moves very quickly in the soil.
All right. And again, anything you're adding to the soil is going to help the clay portion. You obviously cannot rehab your soil if all you're doing is reseeding. If you're starting from scratch, well, then you could go ahead and mix in compost.
You have to be careful not to put on too much compost when on top of the seed. As I've also used the chicken manure as pre-emergent, but then you go thicker.
Yeah.
And that is to bury the seed so that when it germinates, it doesn't come up through.
And the person who sent us this message also talked about mixing it with ryegrass. Ryegrass is...
annual rye.
Annual rye. It's a cool season grass.
Yes.
What happens to ryegrass in the summertime?
Dies.
It dies.
When it gets too hot. The annual rye does. There is perennial rye, and it is sometimes seen on grass seed bags as a component. It's beautiful, which is why it's there. But it's a touchy grass. It doesn't like it too hot or too wet or too dry, or doesn't like to be walked on too much. Or so it gets a lot of diseases. It's a difficult grass to maintain in most parts of the country. So it's there for beauty. Annual ryegrass is a very common winter treatment for lawns in like hot places like the Southwest, where Bermuda grass is used and is green in the summer, and that turns brown in the winter. The people want the lawn green in winter. They put annual ryegrass over the top, let it grow. I used annual ryegrass with students to make, we called them living Easter baskets. So we had Easter baskets we bought at the thrift store, lined them with plastic of different colors, put in growing media, put the annual ryegrass on top. It germinates very quickly. Germinates in less than a week. And then, colored egg we used pansies. We put a pansy in there too and sold them.
How do you water it?
Gently from the top. There is no drainage. You don't want drainage because the people buying it don't want to put it on their table and have it leak. So you have to be very careful about quantity of water. That was a trick. But it germinates. We used it because it germinates so very quickly. And it is pretty, and it does provide the green for the winter. But come next year, it will die.
I think in this particular case, this person needs to find a fescue variety that kind of matches the color and blade thickness of what he currently has. I don't know how many people make note of when they originally install a lawn exactly what variety it is and keep it in their records where they can find easily. I'm guessing 1%.
I have it on my spreadsheet.
Do you now?
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you.
And mine is a mix of several different fescues, and they pretty much look the same. So I don't think you can go wrong with using another fescue.
Well, there's the Barking Dogs here at Barking Dog Studio to let us know it's time for us to move on. Debbie Flower, thanks for helping us reseed the lawn.
You're welcome.
Smart Pots. It's the original award-winning fabric planter. It's sold worldwide, and Smart Pots are proudly made 100% in the USA. Smart Pots, by the way, are BPA-free with no risk of chemicals leaching into your soil, your herbs, vegetables, and other edibles. That's why organic growers prefer Smart Pots, and they last for years. Some gardeners have been using the same Smart Pots for over a decade. Smart Pot's breathable fabric creates a healthy root structure for plants. Because the fabric breathes, Smart Pots are better suited than plastic pots, especially for really hot and really cold climates. And unlike a plastic pot, the fabric won't crack or break from frost or when dropped. For more information, visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details of discounts when you buy Smart Pots at Amazon. Visit smartpots.com/Fred. A while back, we talked with Phil Pursel from Dave Wilson Nursery, a wholesale grower of fruit and nut trees, and we were talking about a fall favorite, persimmons, in particular Japanese persimmons, which are really better suited for the home garden for many reasons, and we get into those reasons in our chat. The other type of persimmon you might consider is the American persimmon. This is a tree that's native from Connecticut to Kansas and southward to Texas and Florida. As a landscape tree, it's not as ornamental as the Asian species and is probably best suited to wild gardens because it has a tendency to form thickets from root suckers. The American persimmon gets a kind of tall, 35 to 60 feet tall, 25 to 35 feet wide, with a broad oval crown, and has very attractive gray-brown bark fissured into a deep checkered pattern. It has glossy, broad oval leaves to 6 inches long, and they'll turn yellow, pink, or reddish purple in the fall. The fruit is round, yellow to orange in color, and it's rather small, 1.5 to 2 inches across. The key, though, with American persimmons, and it's something that would make your mouth do a serious pucker if you bit into one straight off the tree, it's an astringent fruit, a very astringent fruit. And it doesn't become very sweet until it's soft ripe. Plus, with the American persimmons, both male and female trees are usually needed to get fruit. There is one self-fertile variety, though, called Meader, M-E-A-D-E-R. That information courtesy of the Sunset National Garden Book. If you want more information about the American persimmon, check out the latest edition of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter. We go beyond the basics when it comes to the American persimmon. But if you want to find out more about Japanese persimmons, including the non-astringent varieties that are tasty straight from the tree, give a listen to this little chat we had with Phil Pursel from Dave Wilson Nursery. If you're looking for a stunning fall plant that's very tasty, one of the best edible ornamentals for a November, December harvest are persimmons. And there are a lot of great persimmon varieties out there, and it's a very versatile fruit as well. We're talking with Phil Pursel of Dave Wilson Nursery. And Phil, persimmons, I guess, could be divided into two categories, the astringent and the non-astringent. Talk a little bit about the non-astringent varieties, such as the Fuyu.
Those are the type that you can just go ahead and pick right off the tree and eat them as is, like the Fuyu, kind of like the apple types. The astringent are the ones that you need to have them completely ripen, or they give you a really bitter taste.
And for people who are wondering if they're at the store or a farmer's market and they see two distinctly different persimmons, chances are that one is non-astringent and the other is probably astringent.
Yep, exactly. So kind of like the classic non-astringent is the Fuyu persimmon, and it is shaped like an apple. It's flatter and it's hard. And the astringent is the most common one is the Hachia, and that one is oblong, a little bit bigger, and that one needs really to soften completely before it's palatable.
And some of the techniques used to soften the Hachia that I've seen are people hanging them on clotheslines.
Sure. Yeah, so Hachia is one where it's, what they do is they hang them on clotheslines. They also peel them to kind of cure them that way. My mom, she was Japanese. We would throw them in the freezer, and that would work, or just let them sit out and just let them soften up.
The California rare fruit growers, in their descriptions about persimmons, make mention that with the hachia or other astringent varieties, that if you peel them and slice them and dehydrate them, they actually will be sweet. Now, I've never tried that, but if you want to experiment and sort of avoid the puckeriness of an astringent persimmon, you might try that.
Yeah, definitely. I've never tried it before, but I've seen that done. And your description of a astringent persimmon is perfect. Unless you really tasted an astringent, persimmon, the puckeriness the bitterness is unbelievable. Once it softens, it is as sweet as can be. So it's a very unique flavor difference between the two.
There are a lot of great recipes online for working with persimmons, especially the non-astringent varieties like the fuyu. They make delicious cookies. You can dry them, and they're a tasty treat. And just a lot of great ways to use that non-astringent persimmon, including just eating it raw.
Right. It's like right now at the nursery, our fuyu persimmons are devoid of leaves, right? They've gone through their beautiful orange coloring. I'm looking at one right now, and we have a completely deciduous tree, and it's just loaded with the orange fruit, just like a little ornament hanging out there. And what we do during this time of year when we're out digging our trees, if you want a snack, we just go up to our fuyus, pick them right off the tree and eat them, and it's they're delicious.
It's sort of like a Christmas ornament, all the fruit hanging on the trees, and the birds would appreciate it too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the other non-astringent persimmon varieties in the Dave Wilson catalog that people might enjoy trying?
So some of the other ones, there's the giant fuyu, which is it's just a larger fuyu persimmon. I personally don't think it's quite as tasty as the regular fuyu jiro, but the name giant fuyu people like. One that's really become popular, and simply because of the size of the tree, doesn't get quite as big as a regular fuyu, is the izu. So some people kind of think of it as a dwarf fuyu type of tree. The fruit comes on sooner than the fuyu, and the tree itself, just because of its growing habits, is a relatively smaller tree. Something that we really like that's kind of very unique is the coffee cake persimmon. It's a non-astringent, but it does need a pollinizer. And the pollinizer for the coffee cake is the chocolate persimmon. But the coffee cake is the best way to describe the taste is it's almost like a cinnamon swirl type of flavor. I mean, it's really unique. And like I say, it's really early. So it's much sooner than the regular, probably a month sooner than the regular fuyu. The thing with the coffee cake is that it's been pollinized when the flesh itself is kind of marbled, light brown and orange. If it has not been pollinized, the flesh is it'll look like a regular fuyu persimmon. You bite into it, it becomes astringent. It's kind of a unique one where you don't need to let it soften, but it needs to be pollinized. But the flavor is really a very unique type of almost cinnamon pastry type of flavor.
Now, you mentioned with the coffee cake persimmon that it needs the chocolate persimmon as a pollinizer. Any other varieties work as a pollinizer for the coffee cake?
We find that chocolate works the best. You can have a fuyu, and it'll do a kind of a marginal job. And the reason being is fuyus have very few male flowers. And that's why fuyus don't get seeds in them, because there's very few male flowers. So if you use that for the coffee cake, it just doesn't do a really good, thorough job of pollinizing. So that's why we like to tell people that's best for the coffee cake to have the chocolate go with it.
Now, you mentioned another wonderful point about the fuyu persimmon. It is seedless, and it's self-fruitful, as many varieties of persimmons are self-fruitful. And I think that's why the fuyu is so popular, because of the lack of seeds, which can be rather daunting in some varieties.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's put it this way. We grow a lot of persimmons. 75% of all the persimmons we grow are fuyus. And then the other 25 are broken up between Hygeia and the other variety. So it's the most popular. And the other thing about persimmons is that, I'm telling you, for a tree, doesn't get insects, doesn't get, any type of diseases. It's pretty, low maintenance. Loves the valley heat, can take a lot of coal, and, it's that edible ornamental. Like I said, I'm looking at a fuyu right now, and they're little ornaments on a dormant tree.
And even though it can tolerate a lot of cold, it doesn't need that many chill hours, maybe 100 or 200 chill hours during the winter of temperatures between 32 and 45.
Yeah, so the unique thing is that it does well down in Southern California on the coast, and it'll also do well in the foothill. So it's a very reliable, wide-range fruit tree.
Is it easy to maintain its size for the backyard? Can you keep it at 6 or 7 feet and still have a bountiful harvest?
You really can. I have one actually in my backyard, and right now I've been keeping it around 6 feet. The persimmons, they produce off of the new wood that comes out, so it's easy to kind of keep it cut back because all the new growth that comes out, that has all the flowers that will produce the fruit. So it's one that it's relatively easy to, keep for a regular backyard.
Does it take well to summer pruning?
It does. We like to stress summer pruning because that summer pruning is a great time to go out there. And if your tree is getting too tall, just cut it back. Just by nipping and keeping that, persimmon under control, you're not gonna have to worry about getting into any of the fruit, and you're gonna keep it manageable.
And I imagine it does best in full sun.
Full sun, absolutely.
So if you're looking for a fall taste treat, it's hard to beat the persimmons. You can keep it at a very nice size, 6 or 7 feet, and still have a kitchen full of persimmons for holiday gifts or just for munching. They're really a wonderful, tasty treat to have. Persimmons. Find out more by visiting the Dave Wilson catalog online at davewilson.com. And Phil Pursel, thanks for spending a few minutes with us and sampling some persimmons.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
If you want more information about the topics discussed on today's podcast, including lawn reseeding and persimmon information, including the American persimmon, you can find it in the latest Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter, where we go beyond the basics. And there's this huge rainstorm on the way to the West Coast on October 24th through the 26th. And we have a bonus article on tips for draining off heavy rain from your garden and backyard. As the newsletter grows, so will the subject matter. So yes, it will be a good supplement for the Garden Basics podcast, but there will be a lot more garden-related material. Some pictures, maybe a mini podcast or video garden tips as well. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter. It's on Substack. And best of all, it's free. There's a link to it in today's show notes. Or you can just go to substack.com and do a search for the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred. That's substack.com/garden basics. Think of it as your garden resource that goes beyond the basics. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter, and it's free. Garden Basics comes out every Tuesday and Friday. It's brought to you by Smart Pots. Garden Basics is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, Google, Podcast Addict, CastBox, and Pocket Casts. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and leaving comments. We appreciate it.